Would a podcast network featuring all blind and visually impaired podcasters work? In this episode of the I Can't See You podcast, I'll talk about an email exchange I had with my friend Max Ivy as he was pitching the idea to me.
From Studio B in Swarthmore, this is the I Can't See You podcast with David. It's like blind people for dummies.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 115 of the I Can't See You podcast. My name is David, at David Benj on all the socials. I really appreciate you joining me for this episode. And remember, all the socials includes Clubhouse. And I am at David Benj over there as well. And in last week's episode, I had mentioned that Clubhouse was not accessible. And then I listened to That Real Blind Tech Show with All Blind Fantasy Football Commissioner Brian. And one of the people on the show, I believe her name is Allison, said, very accessible. And I thought, wait, what? I couldn't do anything on it. So I went over, I saw that there was an update to the app, and I downloaded it. And lo and behold, man, is it much easier to use now. Don't get me wrong, I still haven't gone in and sat around and listened to any of the stuff going on in there. And I know a lot of people in marketing are saying, what a big thing this is going to be. But I just, I don't see a lot of things, and I don't see this because this is not something, Clubhouse isn't something that you just put something up and wait for people to come and look at it or listen to it or view it or read it or whatever. You are there live, and you have to participate live. It's not, you can't do it at 1.5 times speed or 2 times speed like I like to do some of the YouTube videos and podcasts usually 1.5 times speed. You can't do that. It's live. It's like being on a webinar, an audio webinar. Now, I will say that I do watch YouTube. And again, because I can't really see, it doesn't matter. Somebody might say, well, look at my screen. I can't see the screen even when I have it on the TV. And I've had Liz watching and, sometimes when I have something going, and she'll tell me what's going on. But it would be great if YouTube would run when the screen was locked. Right now, when you lock your screen, for example, if I'm watching one of my favorite YouTubers, who is a guy named Doug Cunnington, who does affiliate marketing stuff and things like that, I have to put the phone in my back pocket and try and hope that if I bend over, my butt doesn't mess with it and have my screen start talking and, interfere with what I'm listening to. Again, because I'm just listening. I can't see it. It doesn't matter what's on the screen, and I'll have to see if Clubhouse is that way, if you can lock your screen and still listen. Now, one thing I will say, I mentioned Podfest last week and how the Whova app is not very accessible. It's probably, 50 to 75% accessible. But one thing that is great, and again, it doesn't matter what's, when they share their screen because I can't see it, but it does, when I lock the screen, when I take Ziggy outside to play in the yard, I can leave the phone in my pocket and still listen while we either play with the ball or, he's just walking around the yard, whatever. And it, makes it nice. That I don't have to leave my screen open because, when I do leave the screen open, like I said, any little jostle or touch, my screen reader will start, VoiceOver will start reading everything on it. So I will have to check out Clubhouse. I still have one invite. I did give one away. Jane ended up taking one because some editors that she has to speak with and pitch stuff to, they do a lot of things on there. So she is going to take one and actually signed up. You can find her at Jane A. Goldstein if you want to connect with her. And again, I'm at David Benj there, like on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. So check it out. Again, I have one invite. If you're interested, reach out. I Can't See You podcast at gmail.com or 646-926-6350. Leave me a voicemail and, or you can call that number and leave a question or a comment as well. So again, 646-926-6350. And it would be great. And we could make sure you let me know if it's okay to use it in an upcoming episode. That would be very cool. So I did mention Podfest, and it was a year ago that I had gone on my own to Orlando to participate in Podfest, and it was a great time, and I so miss doing it. And this year, And they've had some other virtual events throughout the last year. But this one I've actually done more. And I don't know if it's because it's been a year or because I haven't done a lot of Zoom things. Like I had over the summer, everything was Zoom. NFB did a lot of things on Zoom, and like everybody else, there was just Zoom fatigue. So I've actually participated in a lot of sessions, probably at least 5 or 6 hours so far, maybe more. Again, because I can leave the phone in my pocket while I'm playing with the dog, either inside or outside, and it makes it easy because, again, I don't have a lot of time to get on my computer while I am the one watching the dog because I don't like to put him in the cage, which I had to do to record this podcast because I've usually record on Wednesday nights. I've been recording Wednesday nights since we got him, but I had an NFB call last night, so I couldn't do it. So not to worry. He has a treat of a banana and some peanut butter and in this thing called a Kong that he then has to figure out how to get it out. And he does, of course, because it's food, and he is very motivated by food. He loves bananas as much as Zamboni did. In fact, last night I was going to eat a banana all to myself, and as soon as I broke it off from the bunch, he was in the living room. I was in the kitchen. When I broke it off from the bunch, he heard the snap. He was sleeping. He ran into the kitchen. So I had to share it with him. I didn't give him much because it was late. But with Podfest this year, I saw there was a guy last night that I caught the tail end because I didn't think I'd be interested in what he was talking about, or maybe I didn't know what he was going to be talking about. But it turns out he was talking about setting up your home studio. And it's not just for podcasting if you want to do live streams and things like that. And as I've mentioned over the last probably 6 months already, I'm getting some new gear. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it. And I was thinking about it the other day. One of the reasons why I haven't pulled the trigger on it is because when I buy stuff, there is always some sort of, oh, I can't believe it's not working right for you. I know the mixer that I'm getting, it's going to be a Rode Podcaster Pro, and it is going to, that will be very cool. And I went back and forth with Rode to make sure that the touch screen that is on there, once you initially set it up, you don't usually have to go back in there. Everything else is tactile. Because I was considering a couple other things, and one of the other ones I was considering, you still had to go in and do some fidgeting if the levels weren't right or things like that. With this, once you do the initial setup, everything else is tactile, or so I was told in a lengthy email from Rode. So we'll see how that goes. But I do want to set up so I can have a camera. So instead of just playing the audio podcast over on YouTube, there's actual video. I don't know who would want to sit there and watch me, but some people like to watch YouTube. And I guess it would be better to show a talking head than just a screen picture of me, with some text. So I caught the tail end, and I'm excited because the guy is having a Q&A tomorrow at Podfest. They have these breakout rooms where you can sign up, these meetups where you could sign up. And so I'm looking forward to that. So hopefully by the end of this week, I will have an idea of what I'm going to get camera wise and microphone wise, because I haven't decided on the mic yet. Again, I know I'm getting the Rodecaster Pro unless this guy talks me out of it and tells me to get something a little cheaper. But we'll see. And I'm getting, I'll get all the stuff that I need for that. So I'm looking forward to that. And like I said, Podfest has been great this year. Again, not the same as being there in person, but nothing has been like that. And hopefully we're nearing the last turn in the race to getting back to somewhat normalcy. I know Jane has been talking, and she's looking forward to getting back to New York City and doing some things with her friends, which she has not done anything with any of her friends in over a year now. Well, just about a year now, because she came back here in March 14th, she came down. She hasn't had a haircut. Her hair is so long, and, she hasn't done anything because she wants the pandemic to be done, and she doesn't want to, continue, going out with friends. I know, some of her friends have gotten together, and it kind of upsets her a little bit because, it's just she just thinks it's dragging it on. Again, I've always been under the impression that if you want to go out, go out. If you don't. One way or the other, you shouldn't be shamed either way. She would argue against that. So that's all I have to say about that, said Forrest Gump. The main thing that I wanted to talk about today is I got an email from my friend Max Ivy, the blind blogger, over the weekend, and he had a great idea, and it's very ambitious, and it's something that, again, I could use some feedback if you have any ideas. He wants to put together a podcast network so that folks who are blind or disabled, now he thinks all disabled folks should be included in the podcast network. I kind of think it would be better if it was just blind folks. Again, in my view is, and I feel funny saying that because, well, you get it. Being blind or visually impaired is a lot different than not being able to walk or using a wheelchair or something along those lines. You have to have, with being blind, you can't use the same computer. You can't just, sit down at a computer and say, here's your computer, here's where you're going to work, and tap a couple of buttons and now all of a sudden you can work there. It doesn't work that way for blind and visually impaired folks. If a company is on Windows platform, there's software that you have to buy just to make it accessible for, blind and visually impaired folks. And, so if you do a blind podcast network, everybody's going to be in the same boat. That, hey, they either need some sort of zooming feature. If they're not on a Mac, they need something called Zoom Text, or they need JAWS, on Windows. If you're on a Mac, you could use VoiceOver and some other things. I don't know what the Zoom feature that's built into the Mac. And again, VoiceOver is built into the Mac, so you don't have to go out and buy other equipment. Now, as I mentioned last week, just because something works with VoiceOver is there, doesn't mean it's going to work correctly with whatever program or app that you're in. And I was talking about this last night with on a Keystone chapter call regarding finding a new location. We need to find a place to meet once the pandemic is over, that, when we start meeting in person again, because we lost our place. It was the state headquarters, the NFB state headquarters, which they stopped paying the rent for because they just didn't need to keep it because they could run it out of a home office because people typically don't go there. It was, 2 or 3 offices and, $1,000 a month that could go for something better. So because they rented that space, there was a conference room in that building in Philadelphia that we were able to use free of charge. So we were on this call, and one of the guys on the call, Jim, was saying, yeah, you really should, you're still trying to use your eyes to read stuff. And I explained to him, I said, I have so many issues with VoiceOver on my phone and not reading things. I go to a site that has a whole bunch of headlines. And there are times that, as I mentioned last week, when I touch a headline and I can tell that it's only a couple of words, 2 or 3 words long, and then I get a long, not story, but, a long sentence, I know that what it's reading me is not what's there on the screen. And, there's always issues like that. And until I can't see the screen at all by zooming in, I will continue to not use VoiceOver on my computer. There's no doubt when it works, it's great. It is great when it works. When I use it on my phone and I listen to an email, like I was doing earlier, from Adrienne Leeds, if you're familiar with House Hunters International, she's the one when most of the times when they have people looking for a place to live in France, she's usually the person who hosts the people and helps the people find, the place. And I did this webinar that she hosted over the weekend. It was just very cool. As I've mentioned before, considering where we're going to move next, maybe in this country, maybe, we've kind of targeted the Mediterranean, Spain, France, Italy, maybe Greece, just to take a look and see if it would be something. I felt horrible the last 3 or 4 weeks from the weather here. And, we need something a little warmer, a lot less storms, things like that. So, so I've been interested. Our neighbor who is French said, why would you ever want to move to France? I moved from there because you're not freer than you are in this country, meaning the U.S. So I'll pick her brain some more as things get closer to us figuring out what's next. And at this point, since we just moved into the house, I'm guessing it's going to be a while before that happens. But, these emails from Adrian Leeds are fairly long. But to read them on my phone, it's great because then I don't have to highlight and continue to highlight different sections like I would if I were reading them on my computer. It also reads it at a faster speed. And when I read it on my computer, it's a pretty basic speed, like a talking speed, a normal talking speed. When I do it on my phone, it's, I think I mentioned it's around 70 or 75%. So usually around 50% is around the normal speaking rate. So it's great to read things like that. Now, I hesitate to reply to emails on my phone because, I use dictation and it never gets it right. And 100%. So, if it's to a friend, it's a different story. But if it's, some sort of business type email or to a vendor or whatever, I wait till I can type it on my computer. So to do a podcast network for blind folks or blind or, disabled in general is very ambitious. Again, a blind person is going to need different equipment than a person who might be a paraplegic, because the guy or girl who is a paraplegic is going to be able to use something that has a touch screen and could be adjusted as they record. And Max's idea is, he wants to get folks the equipment that they need, and then a podcast editor, and then, to help edit the show and so forth. I mean, it wasn't just, hey, put your podcast on the network, which he's asked me if I would put the I Can't See You podcast on the network. And of course I would. So it's more than just that, because again, sometimes when you get into equipment like that, again, what I'm using right now was a $45 headset from Sennheiser that I got at Amazon a few years ago. And it works because I have enough sight that I can see GarageBand. Now, unfortunately, I don't have enough sight to tell always how my settings are. And I hope that there's been times where I've gone to record and something has gotten changed, whether I did it or it was some other thing happened along the way when I opened it. I don't know how it could change, but sometimes I've had some issues like that. So again, the paraplegic person, this setup would be fine. They'd be able to use it. GarageBand comes on a Mac. There's another program that you can get on Mac or Windows. I think it's called Audacity. And you could get higher end stuff like, Adobe Audition. And because I have the Adobe suite, I'd like to try it, but, there's a little bit of a learning curve. And with me, it's not just a learning curve, it's finding out where everything is. So I haven't jumped in and tried to use Audition for an episode. I would love to have an editor. I think that'd be great, because then all of the ums and ahs and oohs and uh-ohs and, misspeaks or whatever, that would all be taken out. Now, the flip side is I kind of treat this like it's a live broadcast. And, that it's just how it is. If you were doing it live, that's how it would be. If I were on the radio, you're not going to edit that out. It's just how it would be. And, so I think of that when I talk about getting an editor and think about getting an editor. Again, because, the podcast doesn't make much, if any, money other than when you use an Amazon link, ican'tseeyou.com/Amazon, or you click on the ads that may be on the show notes pages. That's the only money I have coming in from the podcast. So it's a little bit to nothing at all. Depends on the month and depends on the traffic I get and so forth. And maybe one day that'll change, but for now that's how it is. So to think about getting an editor, there's just no way at this point I would pay for one. And that's the podcast network. If Max can set it up, that would take care of that. So I'm really interested. I told him I'd help him however I can. And it would be really cool to be a part of that. It would help bring ad revenue because there'd be more shows. So there'd be more opportunities for advertisers. And then maybe everyone would make a little bit of money to pay for not only the editor, but pay for any kind of graphics work that people need when they're launching their show, either for, the cover art for their show. And, hopefully it'll get going. It's pretty ambitious. It's going to cost some money, and he's been working with someone to try and get grants. I had suggested crowdfunding, and I'll keep you up to date on that because I think it would be very cool to be part of that that network, and we'll see how that goes. But I wish Max luck with that, and again, I'm going to help him however I can, and hopefully it'll turn out. Something later this year, or maybe starting in 2022. So I have a couple of Ziggy stories, and one is about the fence, and they kind of tie together. And as I've mentioned before, I'm just shocked at the way some folks do business. And again, I know there is a global pandemic, but I don't think you can blame what I've been going through with a fence company to get our house, as I've mentioned before, has a fence in the backyard. The whole backyard is fenced, but the very back of the backyard. So when we look out our back windows, we see the sides are very nice with 6-foot high white vinyl fencing. It's great, but the back end, the end line of our property, has this like wired fencing that's only about maybe 30 inches to 3 feet high. And we knew sooner or later the dog, Ziggy, would be able to jump over it. And I'll get back to the fence story in a minute to tell you how I think he can jump over it probably now. The other day, it's a little embarrassing, so hopefully it's not TMI. I had an ultrasound scheduled for 10 o'clock in Media. It's about 10 minutes away from where I live in Swarthmore. Jacob was scheduled to work at, 9:15, I think. So Liz was going to take him to work and then come back and get me, and we were going to go to Media. I was just finishing up in the shower and brushing my teeth or whatever, and Liz opens the bathroom door and says, I've left Ziggy in the bedroom so I don't have to put him in the cage while I'm taking Jacob to work, and then let him out and then put him back in for when we have to go to Media. So he's in the bedroom. Now, I haven't seen Ziggy yet on this day. So whenever he sees you, it's like he hasn't seen you in forever, and he goes nuts. So I'm just literally finishing up 2 minutes after Liz said that. He starts, crying like he's lonely in the bedroom. And there's a million things in there that he loves to get to, but nobody else was in there with him. So I guess he was he was lonely. So I'm like, oh, she did really mean that she left him in the bedroom unattended. And I was a little worried what could go on because, like I said, he grabs for just about anything. His socks are his favorite. And so I finish up. I leave the bathroom. And again, I don't have a robe or anything. So I'm leaving the bathroom. I've got nothing on. I open the door and he sees me and he comes charging over. And, dogs don't have hands, so they're not, shaking hands or brushing it. They're biting. And again, I'm a little concerned for some dangly parts. So he's fortunately chewing on my forearm because that's when he sees someone, when he sees us after we've been away or whatever for a couple of hours or whatever, that's where he goes. He doesn't go for your hands. And he doesn't bite hard when he does this. When he's playing, he bites hard sometimes, as I've mentioned before, the different cuts and whatnot on my hands. But, so I'm concerned that, I just want to get dressed as quickly as possible so nothing important gets bitten. So I make my way over to my dresser and I open the underwear drawer, and he immediately jumps on it and closes it. So I can't get in there. And I say, come on, buddy, I need to get in there. I need to get these underwear. I got to get underwear and I got to get dressed so I can go when Liz gets home. I don't know how much of that he understood, but I was able to get the underwear out. I grabbed the underwear out and I dove from there. I took a step or two and dove onto the bed, figuring, okay, he can't get up here. Now, he has gotten up on the couch, but the couch is lower. Our bed is probably about 30 inches high, 30 inches off the ground. Well, I get into the middle of the bed so I know he can't bite my feet while I put my underwear on. And I see his head pop up and he's jumping. And then I see him lean forward as he's holding on with his claws, his front claws. And then he jumps. He sinks down a little bit and jumps, and he gets up on the bed. And I started laughing, and I'm petting him, and I said, wow, that was great, but Liz is not going to like you up here. So let's get you down. Meanwhile, he found a pair of Liz's socks on the bed and that she was going to put on after, we got back from my appointment, ones that she wears around the house. He had them. So I get him off the bed. I get the socks away from him by giving him something else that is, easier, better for him to chew on. It wasn't a dog toy, don't get me wrong. It wasn't that great to chew on. But so when Liz got home and I was telling her the story, I said, to her, I said, I think this is going to make it, he doesn't know it, but he could jump over that back fence by doing what he did, by pulling himself up. Now, maybe it'll take him a little bit because, again, it's a wire fence that has, nothing to really grab onto, but he can put his paws up there like he does on the kitchen counter. And I know the kitchen counter is too tall. Fortunately, he can't get up on that. But if he thought about it and he went over to the fence, I'm pretty sure he could probably pull himself, jump up, put his paws on the top, and then jump over, which, obviously we don't want him to do. We thought we would have a little bit more time, but he's just growing so fast that it's just unbelievable. So, so we had started in January looking for a fence person to do the back fence. We got 2 people to come out. One guy came out the day after I called and gave us an estimate. It was around $1,200. It's around 32 feet of fencing that's needed, so it's not very big. And, all the posts are going to be set in cement and it will follow the existing fence. And we're like, okay, that sounds okay. And then I was going to cancel this other guy, but I figured, I kept forgetting. I figured it was, a few days later. I waited. I met with the guy, and he said, it was like 9 something. And so we said, all right, we're going to go with him. Liz looks over the proposal. This was a Thursday, the last Thursday in January. I call him the next day, leave a message. I call him the next week, leave a message. I call him the end of the next week and leave a message. And again, their office, they have funky office hours because of COVID. There's no need, with this type of business, you don't need to have somebody sit in an office all day long. You need a phone, and that's all you need. But you need to check voicemails. So I called probably a half dozen times. My real estate agent, Branka Deutsch, called once because she had recommended them. They were one of the ones that she recommended by somebody else in her office. So, she said to them, look, I know people in my office have used you, and I've recommended you to the homeowners there, and, you're not getting back to them. Please call them back. And she gave our number, and again, didn't hear anything. So I guess a couple of weeks ago, I said, I'm going to give them one last try, and I sent a voicemail on like a Thursday afternoon. And sure enough, Friday, I heard back from them. I heard back from somebody in the office. She said, I'm actually not in the office, but, sorry we didn't get back to you. And I'll send a contract over on Monday. That was Monday of this week. So I guess I got a hold of them last week. Well, we printed out the contract. And I, again, had to print it out because it was scanned as an image. I couldn't find anything to read it. My VoiceOver wouldn't read it, so we had to print it out. I emailed it to Liz, or texted it to Liz, and I accidentally only texted the first page. And we're reading this contract one night. I guess it was Monday night. And there are so many typos and just misspellings. For example, one of the things that stuck in my mind, they needed to gain access to our yard, and it had something to do with additional fees or whatever. And I'm thinking, what's gain access? I mean, I know what they meant. They meant gain access. But how do you send something like this out? As I told my friend Alex the other day, I'm embarrassed when I send a typo in an email to a friend, let alone if I send a business letter out, and it's got a typo or, some grammatical error. I mean, it's embarrassing to me. And this contract, and again, we only read the first page, had probably a dozen in just the first page. But as we're reading it, there's all these stipulations that we weren't prepared for. And one of them was they were not going to remove that back fence. We were going to have somebody else remove it. And I don't know who we would get. I don't know how if it's set in cement or if it's just, into the ground. I don't know. So between the two, we finally said, you know what, let's go back to that other guy. I hadn't talked to them. I said, I'll email them and see if that includes removal of that fence. And sure enough, it did. So, already done and paid for, with the new fence. So I actually offered them a little bit of a bonus if they could do it. They said 4 to 8 weeks. If they could do it within 4 weeks, I told them I'd give them a 10% premium on top of, the price. So let's see what happens. I will keep you up to date on that. But, it was frustrating to me that I had to wait to read the contract until Liz brought home the printed one because, I could have read it. And it was on a Monday when they supposedly have office hours. So I could have gone back to the girl and asked that question then. And then just the delay in the emails back and forth. Unfortunately, some businesses are more professional than others. And, and they've, had they responded in a timely fashion, I would have been able to deal with them better and maybe work out something with them removing that back fence. But everything just took so long. When I emailed, I would email on, let's say they supposedly had office hours on Wednesday. If I emailed on a Wednesday, I wouldn't hear from them until the next day or the following, the next office hour day anyway. So it didn't matter. They were just slow to respond. And, it cost them our job, the job with us. And again, $900 in the scheme of things for a fence company, I'm sure is not huge, but, it did cost them. So, hopefully, by early April, we will have a new fence and we will all feel better that Ziggy can't, if he can jump over the 6-foot fence, then we got bigger problems. Or maybe we don't. Maybe we got a good story, or some sort of super dog. And it's been funny because we've seen pictures of some of his siblings, and some of the different traits that they have that are similar to Ziggy, and some that Ziggy just doesn't do. One of them loves to play with their bowl of water. Splashing around with their paws. And, Ziggy might have done that once. He might have put his foot in it once, but otherwise, he doesn't do it. So we'll see how that goes, but it's fun to see that. So that is all I have for you this week. Again, if you have any ideas for the podcasting network and fundraising for it, please reach out. ican'tseeyouPodcast@gmail.com or 646-926-6350. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Again, Max hasn't come up with a budget yet. And to get it rolling, it's, you're going to need some, but, once it's rolling, hopefully some advertising dollars will come in and help take care of all, moving forward once it launches. So we'll see. I do appreciate you listening to episode 115. Don't forget to support the Keystone chapter by shopping at White Cane Coffee. ican'tseeyou.com/coffee takes you to the White Cane Coffee Company, where you can buy plenty of delicious coffee, including the high octane double caffeine, which will keep you going all day long. So don't drink it too late in the day. Again, ican'tseeyou.com/coffee gives a small commission, 10%, to the Keystone chapter of the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania, as well as supports a great organization in the White Cane Coffee Company. So I do appreciate if you do that as well. And remember, ican'tseeyou.com/Amazon if you want to buy something at Amazon and put a little change into our pockets here and help support the podcast. I'd appreciate either or both if you want to go on a little bit of a spending spree. Again, continue to stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, do whatever you can to not be a number. And thanks again for listening. I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the I Can't See You podcast with David. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. And don't forget to share the podcast with your friends.